Hey kids, it's Dresser James and the Dresser Saints looking at Zuniceratops. Same rules apply, older to newer, but I didn't realize that I didn't do. When I bought this one, I thought I already did a video for this one. I think I was so excited to get a Zuniceratops that I just opened it and put it on display, looked at it, So now I want to try to go over the actual story of the animal. Unfortunately for some of you who like more scientific models, I believe there are some Zuniceratops figures from more high-end companies that's kind of above my price range. But the Jurassic World ones were made, and I was like, I just really wanted a Zuniceratops. So here's the thing. First and foremost, it was discovered or uncovered in 1996. It was discovered by a young, like a 8-year-old boy, actually. Not 9-year-old, he was 8 years old. And it's not a paleontologist. And so what's really important about the Zuniceratops, first of all, is that one, this is I won't say intermediate, but when we think of ceratopsians, we think of them as the horn. These guys here, the big horn. There's Pachyrhinoceros, there's Diabloceratops, there is the Nunosutoceratops, and then those are the big guys, and then also the Chazosaurine. These guys too, like Pentaceratops and Triceratops here. And so the other group we see are the Psittacosaurs, these early ones like this, and kind of for the most part, people know Protoceratops kind of in the middle. What I'll point out, the ceratopsians as we know them, they essentially evolved in Asia, and then a lot of them migrated across here. The big deal was a lot of them in Asia have this look. They don't really have brow horns. There's like, I think, one exception, Sinoceratops. And so all the ones with the horns and frills that we recognize as ceratopsians are found in America. What's really important about Zuniceratops is it is like right there in this kind of lineage family tree kind of thing. It's one of the first ceratopsians that have brow horns over their head. They evolved around 89, 93 million years ago. So when I show you these guys, they're all living at about between 76 and 66 million years ago, right? And so, like, for example, actually I'll just do it this way. Diabloceratops is a little older, but these guys are from the Campanian. That's like the second to last time in the Intercretaceous period. And Pachyrhinoceros and Triceratops are very in Cretaceous. And so this is a earlier ceratopsian. That's why it's so important to me, at least. And again, I know I always tell you not to look at it as the animal in evolution, to appreciate the animal where it is, but that's kind of an important thing about this particular specimen. And at about 7 to 11 feet long, depending on the specimen you're looking at, these are pretty medium size, or like the size of a cow, basically, animal. Whereas many of these ceratopsians are big as like bulldozers, in my opinion. Anyway, enough about the little history lesson. So the model itself is really important. They have this really cool set of brow horns, and when people see that, they go, "Wait a minute, I've seen it before. Isn't that Nasutoceratops?" Now I just told you that they were separated by time, and this is actually found in New Mexico. And the name Zuniceratops stems from the Native Americans that were found in the region where it was uncovered. So I always tell paleontology students and kids, particularly, that you can't love paleontology and not know history and geography and writing and reading and mathematics. Those are all connected. Like, I just love dinosaurs, but I had to learn geography to understand where they're from and how that area's changed. I'm not personally into anthropology, studying human cultures, but I have to understand those things because many species have names from the local people in the region, or cultural names too. And so the idea is that's why it's important that you know that, so the Zuni nation, Zuni people, this animal's named after them, right? But again, the Triceratops is a different. They both have similar structures, but again, they're both related, but they're not like you would assume that here's a baby Triceratops is an adult, and that's like the middle stage in the toy world. But just to give you an example here, look, these guys have these little horns right here, these little ridges here. This one has two. This one does not. So it wouldn't lose them and then regrow them again. So that's something to kind of show in the toy world. But obviously knowing what rocks they're in is important because this is found in a later time, a different range. And so that's why not only the geography is important, but the geology levels are important too. And so where one of this is like 76 million years old, roughly 73, this one is 89. So they're older in the fossil record. Again, if you want to know more about this, I'll put a link in the description. I have a geology timescale area. I'll put it on my website where you can see the late Cretaceous. You can see like the Campanian animals and then the Maastrichtian above that. And you go down in time and see where Zuniceratops is way below the other ceratopsians on the time scale. And so anyway, I digress that. So again, the main thing to point out, this guy, the frill looks pretty accurate to the actual skeletons I've seen, or the skulls I've seen. The tails are short. Now, I always complain that dinosaur toy tails are short. because it's packaging and all that. With ceratopsians, it actually is on purpose. Well, it should be at least, because their tails were generally short because their center of mass was different than most dinosaurs. They weren't balancing very much, right? And so that's really good with this one too. There is a slight horn right on the nose. It's not as pronounced as like a Triceratops, obviously, but there's some kind of little bump or ridge right there. Like all ceratopsians, they were herbivores. We, for the most part, believe that. We have found adults and like younger ones. We found footprints in this environment. The only other toy species that's found is an animal called Nothronychus. And Nothronychus, this is a, and I always have my lamp here because sometimes the names are really small and really delicate, and I'm really old. I have trouble, well, compared to most of you kids, the name, oh, there it is. Once again, I think this is Procol, made in China, 2006. So I think I mentioned it during my Therizinosaurus video, maybe I didn't, but Nothronychus is a North American Therizinosaur that was found in the same region as this animal. So these two would have seen each other at the same time. There are, I mean, in all these sites I mentioned, there's always like, we find turtles, we find fish, we find this and that. But like there aren't toys of that, so I don't really mention it. But as far as dinosaurs go, there were dromaeosaur, like raptors, and there were smaller tyrannosaurs that lived with these guys. But again, there's no toys of them, so I'll try to kind of like get the idea of the image of the environment. It is a copy of what we see with Triceratops in the Cretaceous, where there's Triceratops and T-Rex and duckbills and all that. There's smaller duckbill there too, so we're seeing that environment. Now, I'm kind of framing it like this happened leading to this, but remember, in the event of the meteorite hitting 93 million years ago, that would have been the last dinosaur, and these guys would have been these cow-sized animals. But time progressed, and we ended up getting 30-foot long Triceratops, right? So that's one thing to point out with this kind of time scale thing. And again, I'll put a link in the description. It's Lake Cretaceous link to see the different ceratopsians where they fall, and by formation in some cases. And so it's because he's from the Moreno Formation. Anyway, so back on the toys themselves, these guys are pretty good. I just bought two because I knew that the Jurassic World figures were kind of in waves. So I'm really digging the fact that we're getting a lot of obscure dinosaurs. They're not as accurate, but they're still like a name thing you can see. And I'm really big on pushing how many species are out there, right? So moving forward to this guy here, it's the exact same mold. And using the, quote, official Scissors Drafted James, I will take this and, oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, you just cut there, cut there, resize, and you are free. So, this figure, of course, is, now, the difference between, I think, does it do anything? I can't remember. I don't think this one does have any. Yeah, there's no like gimmick or anything. It just moves around, which to me, I didn't care. I was like, I just want the figure of a Triceratops. And so, yeah, it doesn't do anything. So the head, I mean, it moves around. It can turn its head. It can roll. It can roll its head, which is really important for ceratopsians. They like to, they can, given the way their heads are designed and their necks, they can roll their heads. And so this one is, oh, and the DNA code is on the foot right here for this one. It's the older from the other Jurassic World line. This one, okay, so you push this and the head goes up like that, and the tail can rotate. This one actually has a hint of feathers right along there, so you kind of see there's a hint of feathers. Now, the idea behind that is, and I think it's stemmed from the two things. One, Psittacosaurus in early Cretaceous China, Russia, probably Mongolia, Thailand. This is a ceratopsian, one of the earliest, well, one of the first Ornithischians, or the herbivore dinosaurs that include duckbills, horned dinosaurs, the armored dinosaurs. It's one of the first ones to, although it's in the ceratopsian, the horned dinosaur family, it is one of the first ones to show it had feathers on it. So we see feathers in herbivores, not in carnivores. I'm sorry, inverse that. We see feathers in many carnivore dinosaurs, not as many herbivores. So Psittacosaurus was an herbivore that showed that, or a Triceratops, essentially ancestor that had these, or at least relative, that had these feathers. Then at HMNS, Human Natural Science, is a Triceratops named Lane, where the skin impressions show signs of what could have been quills. So for example, it's like this really big scale with smaller scales around it. And all of the scales around it are kind of small, but there's bigger ones around this one and a big pump, and it seems exactly where a quill can come out. So now we're seeing the speculation that the ceratopsians and other groups may have had feathers too. And so that's what that kind of makes, that to explain what you're seeing there. Otherwise, oh, the DNA code is here. So again, in the older, like I think it was either Fallen Kingdom, they would have the DNA within their feet. Now they have this little thing you can pull the DNA and see it that way. And so, I think, is it smaller? Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they are the same mold, they're just retooled. Yeah, okay, so it's the same size. The tail seems a little bit smaller on that one, on the brown one, but overall, so that's pretty decent. So anyway, so that's Uniceratops in a nutshell. And again, it's important because we're seeing that. I remember being asked once, is there a Middle Cretaceous? If we consider, by definition, this would be Middle Cretaceous, right? Because early would be Stegosaurus, and late would be these guys. But in the geologic timescale, we don't really recognize a Middle Cretaceous, or early and late. And so the idea is that there's a delineation between those two, and then so it's like the early late Cretaceous or the Middle Cretaceous to most people. And so that's where he stands in. Again, it's a very important animal in its own right to be appreciated and understood. And as far as pop culture, do know in 2001 there was a documentary, animation documentary, where they did like it's dinosaurs that roam America, and John Goodman is the narrator. It's really interesting. And it shows some Zuniceratops that I heard and what they do, And so that's the only example I know of that's in pop culture, but still is something. With that being said, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week.